An ordinary afternoon, or so she thought. At 80 years old, Margaret Whitmore had seen a lot in her lifetime. She'd lived through wars, economic crashes, and the rise of the internet. But nothing, absolutely nothing, annoyed her more than scammers. So when the phone rang on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon and an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, Margaret almost ignored it. But something in her gut told her to pick up. She pressed the answer button and lifted the phone to her ear. "Hello?" she said, her voice calm but firm. A smooth, too-friendly voice responded. "Hello, Mrs. Whitmore. This is David Lawson from your bank's fraud department. We've detected some suspicious activity on your account." Margaret's sharp blue eyes narrowed. "Here we go." She leaned back in her chair, a small smirk forming on her lips. "Suspicious activity?" she repeated. "That sounds serious." The scammer took the bait. "Yes, ma'am. A $5,000 wire transfer was attempted from your account just minutes ago. We believe your account has been compromised. We need to take immediate action." Margaret almost laughed. She had been a banker for 35 years. She knew how real fraud departments operated, and she definitely knew this wasn't one of them. The old lady with a plan. Most people, especially elderly folks, would panic in this situation. But not Margaret. Instead of hanging up, she decided to play along. After all, why waste a golden opportunity? "Oh dear," she gasped, making her voice tremble slightly. "That money is my entire savings. What should I do?" The scammer, thinking he had an easy target, launched into his script. "Don't worry, ma'am. We're here to help. But you need to act fast. In cases like this, we recommend moving your funds to a secure account that only you have access to." Margaret pretended to hesitate. "But how do I know you're really from the bank?" A pause. Then the scammer chuckled, his fake warmth almost convincing. "That's a great question, ma'am. You can verify my identity by checking the number I'm calling from. It matches your bank's customer service line, doesn't it?" Margaret glanced at the screen. Indeed, the caller ID showed her bank's official number. But she wasn't fooled. Caller ID spoofing, a classic scammer trick. She let out a dramatic sigh. "All right," she said. "Tell me what I need to do." And with that, the scammer thought he had won. But he had no idea what was coming. Laying the trap. Over the next 20 minutes, Margaret kept the scammer on the phone, asking innocent-sounding questions. She scribbled notes as he spoke, recording everything. His name, which was obviously fake. The phone number he wanted her to call back on. The secure account details he wanted her to transfer her money to. She even acted nervous, asking, "Are you sure this is safe?" The scammer reassured her. "Absolutely, ma'am. This is a special procedure for VIP customers like yourself. You're in good hands." Margaret bit her tongue to stop herself from laughing. VIP customers? Oh, please. Then at the perfect moment, she pretended to be confused. "Oh, I don't know how to do wire transfers on my phone," she said sweetly. "Could I come down to the bank instead?" The scammer, eager to seal the deal, shook his head. "No, this must be done over the phone. I'll walk you through it." Margaret's eyes twinkled. That was exactly what she wanted to hear. Calling in reinforcements. While still keeping the scammer engaged, Margaret grabbed her landline phone with her free hand and did something he never expected. She dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "The FBI. FBI Fraud Division. This is Agent Carter speaking." Margaret didn't waste time. I have a scammer on the line, right now, trying to steal my savings. I have all his details." The agent paused. "Wait, you have him on the phone right now?" "Yes, dear," Margaret said casually. "I figured you'd want to listen in." A beat of silence. Then, "Ma'am, can you keep him talking for another 5 minutes?" Margaret grinned. "Oh, sweetie, I can keep him talking all day if you want." Closing in. Back on the scammer's line, Margaret continued her little act. "Oh dear, I'm getting confused again. Could you explain how to do the transfer one more time?" The scammer sighed impatiently. "Ma'am, we're on a time limit here. You need to hurry before your account is completely drained." Margaret pretended to panic. "Oh, okay, I'm trying, I promise." Meanwhile, on the FBI's end, Agent Carter was already tracing the scammer's call. "We have his location," he whispered into the phone. "Stay on for 2 more minutes." Margaret kept the scammer engaged, asking nonsense questions. "Is it transfer or wire? What button do I press?" "You press wire transfer," the scammer snapped. "Ma'am, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Margaret smirked. "Well, dear," she said in a voice as sweet as sugar, "you know what they say. The best things in life don't come easy." The scammer was too impatient to notice the shift in her tone. But in a few moments, he would. Because on the other end of the FBI's line, Agent Carter was giving the green light. "Officers are moving in now," he whispered. Margaret leaned forward in her chair, gripping the phone. Her heart pounded. She was about to hear something glorious. And then it happened. A sudden rustling, voices shouting, and then, over the scammer's line, a deep, booming voice. "FBI, hands where we can see them." Margaret smiled. "Ah," she murmured. "There it is." The scammer's voice changed instantly. "Whoa, what? What's going on?" Margaret let out a soft chuckle. "Oh, honey," she said. "You didn't really think an old lady would fall for this, did you?" There was no response, only chaos in the background. Then, the line went dead. Margaret calmly placed the phone down, took a sip of her tea, and sighed with satisfaction. She had done it. But this wasn't over yet, because the next day she'd receive a very unexpected visit, and the twist would make the world cheer. The morning after the sting. Margaret woke up feeling victorious. She had played the scammer like a violin, led him straight into an FBI sting, and saved countless other victims from falling for his scheme. But as she sipped her morning tea, watching the news, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unfinished. Then, a knock at the door. Margaret frowned. She wasn't expecting visitors. She placed her tea down, adjusted her robe, and made her way to the front door. When she opened it, she found 2 well-dressed men in suits. "Mrs. Whitmore?" the taller one asked, flashing an FBI badge. Margaret's lips curled into a smirk. "Took you long enough," she said, stepping aside. Agent Carter chuckled. "You really are something else, ma'am." The second agent, a serious-looking man with a notepad, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, we need to talk about what happened last night." Margaret gestured to the couch. "Then by all means, boys, have a seat." The FBI's secret. Agent Carter pulled out a folder and set it on the table. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious, "the man you helped us catch wasn't just a small-time scammer." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Carter nodded. "He was part of an international cybercrime ring. This wasn't just about your bank account. He and his group have been stealing millions of dollars from elderly victims across the country. Margaret sat up a little straighter. I knew he was a snake, she muttered. I didn't know he was part of a whole pit of vipers. The second agent, Douglas, flipped open his notepad. He wasn't working alone, he said. There are dozens of them. And now that he's in custody, we believe the rest of his group will realize something is wrong. Margaret narrowed her eyes. And let me guess, she said slowly. You think they might come looking for me? Carter exchanged a glance with Douglas. It's a possibility, Carter admitted, which is why we're here. Douglas leaned forward. We have a proposition for you, Mrs. Whitmore. Margaret crossed her arms. I'm listening. A dangerous offer. Carter slid the folder across the table. We want you to help us take down the rest of them. Margaret blinked. Then she laughed. You want an 80-year-old grandma to go undercover and bait cyber criminals? Carter grinned. Well, ma'am, after what you pulled last night, I'd say you're more qualified than half our team. Margaret chuckled, shaking her head. Oh, you boys must be desperate. Douglas leaned in. Mrs. Whitmore, your background in banking gives you a unique advantage. These scammers target elderly victims, assuming they're unaware of how financial systems work. But you, he smiled. You could make them believe you're the perfect target and lead them right into our hands. Margaret tapped her chin. Let me get this straight, she said. You want me to pretend to fall for another scam, gather information, and then let you do your thing? Exactly, Carter said. Margaret smirked. Well, boys, if you wanted to make my week more interesting, mission accomplished. Setting the trap. Over the next 3 days, Margaret worked with the FBI to set up a new scam trap. Here's how it worked. The FBI gave Margaret a fake bank account loaded with savings. They installed recording software on her phone to capture every conversation. Margaret was briefed on all known scam tactics, so she could convincingly play the role of a vulnerable target. And then they waited, and it didn't take long. The call that changed everything. On the 4th day, Margaret was sitting in her kitchen when her phone rang. The number? Unknown. Margaret took a deep breath, glanced at the small FBI surveillance van parked down the street, then answered. Hello? A new voice, different from the first scammer, came through. Mrs. Whitmore. Margaret made her voice extra fragile. Yes, dear. Who's calling? The scammer cleared his throat. My name is Mark Stevens, and I'm calling from the Federal Reserve Security Division. We've detected a large fraudulent withdrawal attempt on your account. Margaret gasped. Oh dear, the scammer continued. We believe hackers have gained access to your funds. To protect you, we need to move your money into a secure government account until the investigation is complete. Margaret almost laughed. These guys really didn't learn, did they? She clutched her chest, playing the part perfectly. My savings? Oh, heavens! What do I need to do? The scammer took the bait. Don't worry, ma'am. I'll walk you through the transfer step by step. Margaret forced her voice to shake. Oh, bless you, young man. I don't know what I'd do without you. She glanced out the window. Inside the FBI van, Agent Carter gave her a thumbs up. Margaret smiled. It was game on. The perfect con. Margaret had played along with scammers before, but this time was different. This wasn't just about catching one criminal. This was about bringing down an entire operation. With the FBI listening in, She had one job: make the scammer believe she was completely clueless, and she was a master at it. Reeling him and the scammer, Mark Stevens continued his well-rehearsed script. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'll guide you through the transfer now. You need to move your funds to our secure Federal Reserve account immediately to prevent further fraud." Margaret let out a shaky breath. "Oh, dear. I don't want to lose my savings. How much should I send?" The scammer didn't hesitate. "All of it, ma'am. Every penny. That's the only way to keep your funds safe." Margaret gasped, playing her role perfectly. But I don't know how to do that on my computer, and my eyesight isn't what it used to be. I get confused with all those buttons." Mark sighed impatiently. "Not a problem, ma'am. I'll send a technician to your house to help you with the transfer." Margaret's stomach tightened. This was exactly what the FBI had warned her about. If the scammer was sending someone in person, this wasn't just a cybercrime ring. This was organized crime. She glanced at the FBI van outside. Agent Carter was already talking into his radio. They were moving in. "The setup." Margaret pretended to hesitate. "A technician? Oh, dear. I don't usually let strangers into my house. How do I know he's safe?" The scammer's tone grew firmer. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is a government-authorized procedure. If you don't do this immediately, your account could be completely drained by hackers. We're trying to protect you." Margaret Fake sniffled. "Oh, okay. I guess I don't have a choice." "Good," Mark said. "I'll send him over now. Be ready." The line went dead. Margaret turned to the FBI agents. "They're sending someone." Agent Carter's face was grim. "Then let's welcome him properly." The scammer walks into a trap. An hour later, a black SUV pulled up in front of Margaret's house. A man, dressed in a fake IT technician uniform, stepped out. Margaret, still playing her part, stood in the doorway, looking frail and nervous. "You must be the nice young man Mark sent," she said, her voice trembling. The scammer flashed a fake smile. "Yes, ma'am. I'm here to help you transfer your money. Let's go inside." Margaret stepped aside. "Come in, dear." The scammer crossed the threshold, and the moment his foot hit the carpet, boom! "FBI! Hands where we can see them!" Suddenly, agents swarmed from every direction. The scammer's face went pale. "Wait! I'm just a technician." Agent Carter grabbed his wrist, slamming him against the wall. "Yeah," he growled. "Then why do you have 10 burner phones and a fake FBI badge in your bag?" The scammer froze. He knew. It was over. A crime ring falls apart. Within hours, the FBI used the scammer's phone records to track the entire network. Multiple scammers were arrested. Millions of stolen dollars were recovered. Dozens of elderly victims were saved. And at the center of it all, Margaret Whitmore, the 80-year-old grandma who had outsmarted a global cybercrime syndicate. The moment that went viral. The next morning, Margaret's story hit the news. 80-year-old Grandma lures scammers into FBI sting. Ex-banker turns the tables on international cyber criminals. Meet the grandma who played the long con and won. Her phone blew up with calls. Neighbors, old friends, even complete strangers wanted to thank her. Margaret laughed. "Oh, honey," she told one reporter, "I'm just an old lady who doesn't like being lied to." Agent Carter shook his head, grinning. "Ma'am, you're a national hero." Justice served. A month later, Margaret sat in a high-profile courtroom as the scam ring's leader was sentenced. When the judge asked if any victims wanted to speak, Margaret stood up. She adjusted her glasses, walked to the podium, and looked the scammer straight in the eye. "You thought you could fool an old woman," she said, voice steady. "But you underestimated me. You underestimated all of us. And now?" She smiled. "You're the one paying the price." The courtroom erupted in applause. The scammer hung his head. Margaret returned to her seat, taking a sip from her thermos. Just another day, another scammer down, and one less bad guy in the world. The legend of Margaret Whitmore. Her story inspired millions. Banks started using her case as a training example for elderly fraud prevention. The FBI publicly recognized her efforts. She was even offered a role as a consultant for financial fraud prevention programs. But Margaret, she went back to her peaceful life. One morning, as she sat on her porch, sipping tea, her phone rang, another unknown number. She chuckled, shaking her head. "Let's see what kind of trouble we're dealing with today." She answered. "Hello, dear," she said sweetly. And just like that, it all began again.